Have you ever wondered why Draco Malfoy hated Harry Potter so much? What if his hatred wasn't just petty jealousy, but something much deeper? In today's video, you'll discover the real reasons behind their legendary rivalry. Throughout the entire series, Harry Potter is portrayed as the ultimate hero. That makes sense. After all, the early books were meant for children, and a complex, morally ambiguous protagonist wouldn't have fit the tone. Draco, on the other hand, became the perfect antagonist. Arrogant, cruel, and cowardly, he seemed to exist purely to make Harry's life miserable. Tom Felton's brilliant performance only solidified this image. But was Draco really just a spoiled bully? Or was there more to his animosity toward Harry? The truth is, Draco had every reason to resent him. A childhood shaped by bloodlines. To understand Draco's hatred, we need to look at where he came from. He was the only son of Lucius Malfoy, a wealthy, pure-blood wizard who once served Lord Voldemort. His mother, Narcissa Black, came from an equally prestigious magical family. From childhood, Draco was taught that he was special, superior to Muggle-borns and those with lesser heritage. With no siblings to challenge him and parents who reinforced his pride, Draco grew up believing he was destined for greatness. By the time he arrived at Hogwarts, he was already entitled, arrogant, and used to getting his way. But was that enough to make him despise Harry Potter? Probably not. After all, Draco had his own circle of friends. His true resentment came from something far more personal: the first betrayal. Before he even set foot in Hogwarts, Draco had already heard of the boy who lived. His parents speculated that Harry would grow up to be an even greater dark wizard than Voldemort himself. They were eager to see what kind of ally or rival he might become. Draco's first encounter with Harry was in Diagon Alley. Not knowing who he was speaking to, he treated him politely, even trying to befriend him later on the Hogwarts Express. He reached out first, offering his hand and an alliance. Harry's response: public rejection. It wasn't just a refusal, it was a humiliation. Harry chose Ron Weasley over him, laughed at Draco's words, and made it clear that he wanted nothing to do with the Malfoys. For Draco, who had been raised to believe in status and legacy, this was a crushing blow. It was the beginning of their rivalry and a wound that never quite healed. A lifetime of unfairness. As if the rejection wasn't enough, Hogwarts quickly became a nightmare for Draco in one particular way. No matter what he did, Harry always stole the spotlight. Draco was smarter, more disciplined, and more skilled in many areas. Yet despite his efforts, Harry always received praise, attention, and admiration. Not because he worked harder, but because he was famous. Professors, except for Snape, favored Harry. Students idolized him. Even when Draco outperformed him in academics or Quidditch, it never seemed to matter. For a boy raised to believe in prestige and superiority, this was unbearable. The frustration built up, feeding into his resentment. A life defined by expectation. Unlike Harry, who had the freedom to choose his own path, Draco was bound by family expectations. He didn't just dislike Harry, he feared him, because if Harry won, that meant the Malfoy legacy was crumbling. His father expected him to uphold their bloodline's reputation. His mother pressured him to be the perfect son. His entire world revolved around pleasing his family and living up to their ideals. So when Voldemort returned, Draco wasn't just fighting for his own beliefs, he was fighting to survive. Unlike Harry, he never had the choice to be a hero, the redemption that almost was. For all his cruelty, Draco wasn't heartless. Despite years of rivalry, he hesitated when given the chance to expose Harry to Bellatrix Lestrange. He wasn't as ruthless as his father had wanted him to be. And in the end, he rejected Voldemort's cause entirely. I'm not saying Draco was secretly a good person or that Harry was the villain, but if you take a step back, it's clear Draco had plenty of reasons to hate Harry, and in his position, many others would have felt the same. Have you ever wondered what would have happened if Harry and Draco had been friends? What if their rivalry had never existed, or if they had found common ground before it was too late? In today's video, you'll discover how their fates were more intertwined than they ever realized. From the very beginning, Draco and Harry were set up as opposites. One, the celebrated boy who lived, famous before he even understood why. The other, a proud pureblood, raised to believe in his own superiority. Yet in many ways they weren't so different. Both came from powerful wizarding families. Both grew up under intense expectations, Harry as the chosen one, Draco as the heir to a legacy. Both were judged before they even had a chance to define themselves, and yet one was destined to be the hero while the other was forced into the role of antagonist. Draco didn't choose to hate Harry. It wasn't simple jealousy, though that played a part. It was the way Harry always got away with everything, the way teachers looked at him with admiration, the way people whispered his name as if he was something greater than the rest. From the moment they stepped into Hogwarts, it was clear Harry had already won. Draco watched as Harry formed friendships effortlessly. Ron and Hermione stood by his side, no matter what. Meanwhile, Draco was surrounded by followers, not friends, Crabbe and Goyle, who were more like bodyguards than companions. Even Pansy Parkinson, who seemed to adore him, was more interested in his status than in who he truly was. There was something infuriating about the way Harry ignored the rules and was still rewarded. Draco worked hard, he studied, he upheld Slytherin's reputation, and yet, when Gryffindor cheated their way to victory in Quidditch, no one cared. When Harry broke school rules, the teachers let it slide. When Draco tried to call it out, he was dismissed as a whiny brat. It wasn't just about being overshadowed, it was about fairness, and to Draco nothing about Hogwarts felt fair. Year after year, the resentment grew. The second year was worse than the first. The air of Slytherin, the Chamber of Secrets, murmurs in the halls about pure-blood supremacy. Draco knew what everyone thought, that it was him, that he was behind it. He wasn't, but he wished he was. Because, in some way, he wanted the rumors to be true. He wanted Harry to feel powerless for once, to know what it was like to be looked at with fear instead of admiration. But even as he threw insults and taunts, even as he played the part of the villain, a part of him wondered, was this really who he wanted to be? And came the Triwizard Tournament. Draco could hardly believe it when Harry's name came out of the Goblet of Fire. It was so typical. Even when he didn't enter himself, fate still bent in his favor. And the worst part? People still saw him as the victim. Draco watched the way people rallied around Harry, even as they doubted him. He saw the way Dumbledore and the teachers guided him through every impossible task. The way Ron came crawling back after a brief moment of doubt. He was tired of it. But things changed that year. When the Dark Lord returned, the world became something else entirely. This wasn't just schoolyard rivalry anymore, it was war. And for the first time, Draco saw what his father truly stood for. By the time they reached their 6th year, Draco wasn't just a spoiled, bitter boy trying to get under Harry's skin. He was a soldier, a pawn in a war much larger than himself, and for the first time he was truly afraid. The dark mark burned on his arm. The weight of his family's reputation crushed him. His father was in Azkaban. His mother whispered about consequences too terrible to imagine. And Draco had been chosen.
Kill Dumbledore!
He knew he couldn't do it. He tried, he planned, he sabotaged, but when the moment came, he hesitated. And in that moment, everything changed. Because Harry saw him, really saw him, not just as an enemy, not just as a rival, but as a person. It was the first time Draco realized they weren't so different. Both of them had been thrown into a battle they never asked for. Both of them carried burdens too heavy for their age. But Harry had people who stood by him. Draco had nothing but fear. If things had been different, if Draco had made a different choice, maybe he and Harry could have been allies, maybe even friends. But it was too late for that now. By the time the final battle came, Draco was a shadow of who he had been. He wasn't fighting for Voldemort. He wasn't fighting for Harry. He was just trying to survive. And in the end, it was Harry who saved him. The boy he had hated, envied, resented for so many years risked his life to pull him from the fire. Even then, Draco never said thank you. Maybe because he didn't know how. Maybe because it was easier to pretend it never happened. But in the years that followed, he thought about it. About how different things could have been. About how maybe, just maybe, Harry Potter wasn't the enemy he had always believed him to be. Draco Malfoy was never a hero. He was never a true villain either. He was just a boy caught between expectation and reality, struggling to find his place in a world that never gave him a choice. And maybe, in another life,